Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm David Straggy, and here in the room I have the real host for the evening. I'm for real this time. So, Brandon, why don't you take the floor here and tell us while I'm going over here to the stool.
Well then, welcome back, gentle viewers, to another iffy presentation by yours truly, as I talk to you about the film Barfly, starring My Phone Crashed, starring Mickey Rourke and Audrey, what was it? I said my phone, and of course my phone crashes when I need to. Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway, and directed by Barbet Schroeder, which is you'd think I'd get this because he's French,
right?
And of course written by Charles Bukowski, which is kind of funny because that's exactly who the subject of the film is. Barfly is about a man named Charles Bukowski, who is a writer of sorts, a novelist, a poet. And this takes place during his years as a barfly. And during this time, he meets the love of his life. Can their love last? Or is it doomed to failure in the nihilistic void that is the barfly? So, Dave, was this your first time actually watching Barfly?
Well, when you first tasked me to find where I'd put my copy. Now I picked up a copy from, and I buy left and right, film here, film there. So I don't know how I ended up with a copy, but I did, and I found it, and I actually watched this a couple of weeks ago, before we even scheduled it onto the agenda to do, and watched it with my fiance, and that was the first time that I had actually seen this film, and it is fresh in my mind. So that's pretty much what I'm going on, that experience. So
you're able to get a female opinion on the film,
somewhat. She specifically told me that because she was a bartender at one point in time. My fiance, she told me that a barfly is technically it can be a man or a woman who has the ability to either beg for drinks or trade it for sex to get drinks. But no matter what, that is pretty much what a barfly is. At least that's what she told me. Told me what a barfly is, and that is that the same with you guys, or is that what you guys think a barfly is?
That's my impression is, I mean, of course, you got two main barflies in the film, both Mickey Rourke's character and I don't know why I keep wanting to say Faye Dunaway as Gina Davis for some reason.
I don't fully feel like Mickey Rourke is a full-on barfly, because I think he's more because he has, even though he's like the bar clown, he is.
So you see, he's fighting for money and drinks.
Yeah,
he is remarkably good at gleaning drinks with minimal expenditure. So,
but he has level of respect with the owner of the place,
right,
for some reason. He doesn't need to have all that. It seems like that owner provides for him and keeps him around because he's kind of a protector of the place. He closes the place for him.
Well, see, for me, I kind of look back. I worked in a bar for a long time, and I'm familiar with people who could be considered barflies. But I also grew up watching Cheers, and I think of Norm and Cliff as the quintessential barflies, and they had a slightly cleaner, more wholesome
To me,
version.
people
But,
who are always sitting at the bar
yeah,
talking your ear off
right,
to me, and
right.
and whenever you open the place, they're there. Whenever
Yes.
you walk out, they're there.
Oh, and there's even multiple episodes where it's like, "Hey, Norm, can you close up?" Oh, sure. That sort of thing. It's like,
So, Jacob, was this your first time watching the film?
oh yes, it definitely was the first time I'd seen it.
I know you've heard about it before.
I've heard about it, no doubt. I mean, it like I told you, I think a lot of when like Mickey Rourke was making his big comeback with The Wrestler and all that stuff, I think a lot of critics did cite Barfly as one of his kind of last great moments, if you will, before which I'd heard about it, but this was my first time seeing it, and it was interesting. I mean, again, I'm not unfamiliar with that world. I didn't. Yeah, the bar I worked at was not nearly as seedy as this one, and uh, there the barflies were a little less
obvious.
a little less obvious, a little less permanent in their affixture to the place. And in fact, one of the main ones who I considered sort of a Cliff character ended up getting banned from the bar because he annoyed people one time too many.
Well, I guess
So, yeah.
barflies can be a different person each time, I guess.
Right.
This was a bad one, yeah.
Well, actually,
right.
Dustin, we are on first impressions still, so you can actually go.
Well, so earlier today I saw the new Child's Play movie, which blew me away, and so I came into Barfly riding pretty high off of that. Like I was feeling the thunder, like it was great. Like I was sweating and shaking a little bit, and it's like, yeah, let's do stuff. And I put in Barfly, and I could just feel my mood like dropping and dropping and dropping, and I'm like about a quarter asleep right now. Like oh my god, I hated this fucking movie.
What, they're not the same film?
Tell us why.
Like we just follow this drunk guy around for like an hour, and it's like, oh, this is my childhood. This is when I was 5, and Dad would take me to every bar in town, and I would sit in the corner and be sad. Like I hated this, and honestly, probably shouldn't have come on for this episode.
Well, it's probably fortunate.
Honestly,
bad.
I think your mood is perfect for the atmosphere.
It's totally bad. I'm trying to think of like new curse words for it. I want to say ass trash, but I use that too much, so I gotta get something new.
Well,
actually, I was gonna say my first impression as well, which this is a Father's Day episode for me more than anything else. Because this was not my favorite film, despite me using my birthday to put this out.
Oh, happy birthday.
This was my father's favorite film, or actually still is my father's favorite film. I mean, he is still living, and I don't think that he has changed that.
Wow.
And when I first saw Barfly at a very young age, probably around age of 9 or 10, I think. And I was shown this film quite a few times throughout growing up. So back then, Dustin, I would have agreed with you wholeheartedly. I hated the film. I had several reasons for that. I mean, there was a lot of alcoholism that I got to see growing up. And to me, alcoholism also killed a relative of mine that I deeply cared for. That was very reminiscent of the main character of the
Pretty
film.
much killed my dad. Yeah. I mean, my dad was
Um,
kind of a mean creep most of the time, but still.
So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I didn't even want to associate with anybody who was drinking until well into my college years.
Mhm.
And when I went back to this film later on in life, and of course, back in those days, I'd also say that most horror movies were trash too. So I didn't like horror. I didn't like most things. If it wasn't an outright comedy, not a deep comedy, it had to be a surface level comedy or a high level action at those days for me to say it was a good film. I would have thought Child's Play was total trash back in those days.
So,
Two or
was this
three people
before?
think that about the new one, although the new one is like legit. Like it's so good. This is where
So
Tupac.
Was this
so I
before or
can
after you? I say, was this before or during the phase where you watched History of the World Part One every night?
Oh, this was actually that was that was during that time because it was one of those comedies that I watched a lot of, but that was the kind of thing I watched constantly.
Can we see that
So
instead?
Well, between this and Crumb, you needed some sort of.
What the hell is
yeah, I
Crumb?
mean,
From
Crumb is a documentary about Robert Crumb, the independent artist,
hmm
Ugh.
and I also
Yes.
got subjected to that a lot as a child as well.
Ugh.
Um,
Yeah.
so a lot of this
Actually,
is my childhood.
if I recall
Uh,
correctly, I believe my viewing of Crumb was with your father.
yes.
He's like, let's watch this.
Yes, that is probably exactly. And I understand where that came from, and we'll talk a little bit more about
Right.
that as we go on.
Mhm.
But as I got older and I learned to appreciate a lot more nuance, I
Mhm.
opened my mind up to a lot of things that I previously, I think, had had my mind closed to, especially just due to other circumstances that really weren't being fair to the film or the actors or anything really. And that's how I
Mhm.
got to like films like that would come onto that, like, might be Criterion or actually horror films for that matter. I was
Mhm.
able to get into those things by opening my mind. So when I
Mhm.
approached Barfly again many years later, I was able to do so with an open mind and appreciate the nuance that the film had. So it was kind of it's a tale of two people: the young me who hated it, and the current me who can appreciate it
Well, I mean,
as a
for
bittersweet.
me, like I can do that too, and I especially enjoy a lot of like more artful films. Like, for example, M is maybe one of my favorite. I don't know if it even can be called a horror film, but M is one of my favorite
O.M.'s a
just
good film, yeah.
films. M is one
I
of
wish they'd
my like
done that
top
for
5 films
slasher.
overall. Um, and
Mhm.
so, I mean, I can really appreciate stuff like this. It's just, I think a lot of it too is kind of the mood.
Mhm.
It's like you go somewhere, ready for a rave, and it's like a square dance, but there's
Well,
no
why don't
music
we
and you're by
move
yourself.
into
Oh,
So it
okay.
why don't
was,
we move into
Yeah, it's like if you were at a football game and then you were handed a hula hoop with grass skirts and be like, okay, let's dance.
like, who the fuck are you? Uh,
Okay.
but so
this is
let's
for
move on
Tupac. God
into
damn it. It's going to be in my head. That's a line from the new
I think
Child's Plan. It's just going to be stuck in my head. So if I just like snap it off, like, I am sorry. I just can't help it. Like there's a scene where like Chucky has learned how to make like the stabbing motion and he's like stabbing another toy and they're trying to like film him and one of the kids is like, say this is for Tupac. Come on, we'll go viral. And like he can't and he's like want to sing the Buddy song? And then later, like, he when he's like standing on top of somebody. This is for Tupac. Stab. It's like, God damn. He took that joke and made it so dark. So
Good times.
anyway,
So let's I think it's I can never remember whether plot or characters come next.
like they fucking matter.
But why don't we talk?
There
Why
was
don't we
very
talk
little
about
Apparently, this is
plot.
based on the real life.
The plot is next. The plot followed by characters is how it is in our outline. Although I feel like we are a little bit too sticklery on the outline and actually forget to talk about the movie.
A woman and an older man seem to be following this man who is a drunk, and he basically meets up with another drunk and has a romantic affair with of sorts with her, and then somehow or other there is an infatuation with his writing or his manhood along the way by another chick who likes him for his words.
For his writing. Like, turns out he's a writer. That's like the big
Yes.
reveal of this. And it's like, oh, okay, this is starting to go somewhere interesting.
And she
Well, he is a writer.
And then that just like
he wrote the
crashes,
film.
though.
The actual man it's based off of wrote the screenplay of this film.
Right.
And he also hates, as he says in the film, he hates movies.
Yes.
And he hates TV. He considers it all trash. So it's kind of funny that he wrote the screenplay for the film.
He hates movies, so he wrote a bad movie. That's not too surprising.
But at the end of the day, it is a love story. It is a romance. It is the tale of him meeting the love of his life and how that unfolded. Considering the real man himself is a very miserable individual.
Good, fucking deserves it.
This is this is an interesting plot line where you see these two characters, and it really is more of a slice of life type tale, where you see the life through the lens of these people.
And actually,
yes, definitely beer goggles, and rum, and any other type of alcohol.
Well, no. What was it? It was a scotch and water, wasn't it?
They were really into vodka. I remember that, or at least the publisher lady was.
Right. Yeah. So basically, you got this dude Henry, who's the stand-in for Charles Bukowski, and then the woman is Wanda, and you got the one bartender who is very sympathetic and treats him well, and the other one who's a jerk, and they're always getting into fights. And the one thing I thought was kind of cool, and here's our late spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, you can't talk about the movie with any kind of depth without spoiling it.
The film starts and ends with
Anyway.
Henry fighting Eddie. And it starts and ends in such a way that you're like, well, this is an ongoing cycle, and you've just seen a piece of this cycle. And I'm like, okay. And so definitely Slice of Life fits this one, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Circle of life in here.
The circle.
And it's a very nihilistic film.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where the depth of it comes from, is the full nihilism. The lines that are created, and you can tell that the man wrote this film because of that. I mean, he even commented once in an interview, the writer of the film, is that he is always suicidal. He always wants to die. And that he looks at his constant alcoholism, which hadn't been doing a very good job considering he was 68 when he did the interview. But his constant alcoholism apparently hadn't killed him yet, but it's like his constant alcoholism is a slow method of killing himself, which is very true. I've worked with many people in my field where that is exactly what they say. Yeah, I'm killing myself. It's just I'm doing it over years instead of days.
So in his case, it took 73 years, but yeah.
I mean, when he wrote this film, he using some bad language in this, but to recorrect, basically the guy called him and said, "I'd like you to, hey, is this this person? We'd like you to write a screenplay for film." Yeah, fuck you. Hangs up the phone.
Yeah.
It took several times for the director of the film to convince him to actually write this film.
Yeah, apparently this film was sort of a labor of love for Barbet Schroeder, and I don't know
he
why,
threatened to
but
cut his finger off for the
yes.
funding.
Yes. It was
Well,
crazy.
so it sounds like a lot of this movie like really dripped like pretentiousness, and I can see why, like, hearing a story like that. It's like there's so much self-importance and just utter bullshit.
Well, I guess a lot of people when they mention this film, because what's interesting is at the time that this film was suggested by you, Brandon, it's like a whole bunch of directors that I know on the independent realm brought up this movie in a VHS group or whatnot, and and then like there was a bunch of people posting like, "I love this film." I'm like, really?
I would have been so much less kind.
And then there was all kinds of people repeating the same line. To all my friends.
Person you throw rocks
Yes.
at.
To all my friends.
Yeah.
Justin's contrarian opinion corner here.
Well,
But I mean, now character-wise, that's really where the film shines, is in the characters. That's what it's about, is the characters. And we can't have the movie without the titular Barfly. I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on Henry? Does he seem like the kind of man who has it all together to you all?
For most of my life, I thought this movie was called Barfly.
really?
Well,
That's my opinion on him.
I do.
Barfly, yeah.
I do think that it was an interesting character, and it was an interesting portrayal, and I think Mickey Rourke did an interesting job. I don't think it was the strongest performance I've seen, but I actually agree a little bit, Dustin. I agree a little bit with what you were saying about the. I'm not sure I would call the film overall extremely pretentious, but I felt like his character had sort of a pretension, like the way he did everything. It was kind of theatrical, you know. There was a bit of and
remember that line? There's something regal in the way you do things, and it's like,
yeah,
like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so it was kind of like I felt like there was a little bit of pretension in the way he acted. Just in general, the way he carried himself. And it was interesting. Like some of the other characters were just much more straightforward, much more, but he was sort of the flamboyant character. Yeah.
And from what I've heard, though, he did really nail the real person. I mean, according to the guy who wrote it, he said, "Yeah, that's pretty much identically me." And Mickey Rourke was kind of doing the method acting thing throughout.
I did I did watch some of the.
Guy writing a story about himself says that, oh, the character acts just like myself.
Well, I did watch some of the bonus features with the DVD. Did have interviews with Bukowski, and even though he was much older, I did feel like I did see a little bit of the same behavior and mannerisms, whatnot.
Oh yeah, I mean, they had that scene with the dog, the one that's just barking madly, which apparently was ad-libbed by Mickey Rourke when he saw it, which was really loved by that, because it's like this really just shows the visceral hatred of humanity and the fascination he has with that. And I'm like, yeah, this is a phase that many people go through in life, hating humanity to that point. I know in recent years I could think of myself hating humanity to that point.
Yeah.
But he is an interesting individual. I'm not sure many people would strive to be him.
Well, I know he starts off being a really stupid character, but no,
Starts off?
because I think throughout the film he becomes a little bit more intelligent. Because, okay, before he didn't have a woman, he came back with a woman. You know, and the woman is exactly almost like him. You know,
Agreed.
so and even though he went off with the other chick for a moment, she still stayed by him and afterwards. So in a sense, it was like kind of like a little bit of a circle of life thing. So.
Well, what did you think of Faye Dunaway's character?
Unpleasant.
She's supposed to be unpleasant, that is for sure.
She wasn't as unpleasant as the one lady at the corner of the bar, but but yeah.
Well, she used someone else to get the liquor that they they got.
I don't actually know what Faye Dunaway looks like, so that was like the girlfriend character, right?
Yeah.
That was the girlfriend character, the one that was more or less drunk.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway was Wanda, and Alice Krige was Tully, which was the one that was trying to get him published. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I did remember her name because it was like they said it out loud a lot.
Right. But yeah, I felt like Dunaway, she did she gave a good performance. I mean, I thought it was really, she nailed the characterization of this sort of, which was one reason why it was kind of unpleasant to watch her.
Well,
yeah.
It was kind of unpleasant to watch her.
Especially
since especially that one night when it's like she went out, got drunk, and he kept hearing. It was. I think the thing that got me the most about the film was the fact that he kept hearing this man beat his wife, and when he finally met them, and he realized that she actually enjoyed the beatings.
Yeah.
It is when you realize that there are different aspects of life that evidently you're not used to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, even he was taken by surprise because she had talked about how many people he'd killed and all that. The neighbor, not the Barfly, but
not Barfly.
Everyone's got their own kit.
But I mean, one of the lines that I think one of my father's favorite lines from the film is when they first introduced Faye Dunaway's character, and she's talking about how much she hates people, and she's like, "Do you hate people?" And he's like, "No, but I seem to feel better when they're not around."
Yeah.
In a way, Bill Pullman kind of reminds me of this of his character here. Whenever he talks.
And there was another. I thought that was kind of a fun. Let me see if they have it listed here. There was another interchange they had where it was something like, she's like, "I could never fall in love with anyone," and he's like, "Well, that's fine. No one ever loved me." So it's like, I know I butchered it there, but that's kind of the gist. Yeah.
There was one line I liked. It was like, "Hatred's the only thing that lasts."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I
That's
thought
right
that
after
was,
she
I
beat
thought
him.
that was cool.
Yeah.
Because she had the weighted purse and she beat him over the head with it.
I thought she was hitting him with a pan. Like, I couldn't tell what the fuck that was.
She had something heavy in her purse that she had put in there, and she beat him like mercilessly over the head with it and cracked his skull.
He's just like puts a brick in there or some shit.
But from a professional standpoint, and again, this might be one of the reasons why I'm fascinated by the film, is because professionally I deal with mental illness and alcoholism and drug use and all of this lovely stuff. And everybody looks at Fatal Attraction and says, "Oh, this is the best illustration of borderline personality disorder ever." I'm like, no, it isn't. It's not at all. I cannot tell you any borderline personality individual I have met over the years, and I've met many, that has killed the person's pet and put it in the pot and tormented a family like that. However, Faye Dunaway's character played that disorder to a T. The fear of abandonment, the inability to really get close to a person, the strong love-hate feel, just the black and white of everything. It was all there. It was every note was played. To me, still, that is the best illustration of borderline personality I have ever seen on film.
Of Faye Dunaway's character.
Mm-hmm. Not many people would like to be with somebody with borderline personality. It's a very hard one to live with. And looking at her character, you can understand why.
Oh, Sally Fields was another character that dealt with one of her coming out films. Was a film that dealt with was it multiple personality disorder or was it borderline? I'm trying to think, but she played a character when she was very young, where she.
Who did you say?
Sally Fields.
Oh, she played an interesting mental disorder in Hello, My Name is Doris. Oh, that was a creepy film. But as far as this one,
she played in a mini series called Sybil, where she had
Sybil.
15 different personalities.
So I guess as far as the other characters, we've got Tully. She was an odd character, really enamored of his writing.
Very childish.
Very childish in a lot of ways. And he kept telling her she was living in golden bars, and I guess in a way that was kind of an interesting way of looking at it. And then, of course, you got Sylvester Stallone's brother, Frank, playing Eddie, Henry's eternal...
porn stash.
Yes. Frank Stallone with the porn stash, yes.
Which was by design. because he kind of looked a little bit like his brother, so they wanted to hide that. They're like, his lips are a dead giveaway. Put him in a porn stash. Stat.
Oh, jeez.
Did he have anything to do with the music in this film at all? Because I know he had something to do with the music in Rocky when he played in the very beginning of that film.
Well, the music in this one's by Jack Baran. I don't know.
Because Frank Stallone was a musician, and I was wondering if his music was somewhat used in here or not.
Well, I don't know if any of it was used, but definitely it had good music to it.
Yeah.
I barely noticed the music.
Oh, I love the music that they
kind
had
of sort of jazzy feel. It was really good.
Yeah. I mean, that main theme that they used was really cool. it just kind of had that. I mean, you felt like you were there, but the other characters, they had a lot of really cool side characters. We were talking about Cheers. You had a lot of really you had some characters that were out there, not just in the bar, but apparently manning the ambulance. It's like, do you guys work the day shift and the night shift?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of Henry's friend, the bartender that was actually on his side. Who was that one? Who's that? Anyone remember?
I can't remember his
I
name.
want to say Jim, but this actor doesn't entirely look like him.
He also had a mustache.
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, he did not have anything to do with the music.
No.
A lot of
Apparently,
these guys looked alike to me. I don't know, man.
Well, it was the 80s.
Everybody was John Holmes, right? That's a name I know. Wonder what he was famous for. I don't know.
Everybody was Don Ho. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I need
Right. Actually, yeah, you got a small role from a young Prude Taylor, Vince. That was kind of interesting. But
so what did y'all like any of the other personalities they had in the bar, like the
what
the
personality?
peanut galleries?
I like the old man who came in and he couldn't quite put his drink to his lips.
Oh, the one that used his that sort of scarf or whatever to take the drink. That was creative.
You notice at the end, he's like, once he's giving out the free drinks, he goes out and drags out the other bums from the street to get the alcohol.
Now, I was trying to figure out if they were saying that was more age related, or if he was just that hard up for a drink that his body had started getting the shakes. But whatever the case, I was watching that and I was like, I'm impressed by his ingenuity and also very sad.
I always thought that it was like Parkinson's or something.
I guess so. This film actually, that does mean one of the things that kind of I had mixed feelings about, very mixed feelings, was on the one hand, the film showed pretty clear-eyed, showed or portrayed these very, very, very alcoholic people, practicing alcoholics. It showed a lot of the downside to it. But on the other hand, it almost felt like it was kind of glorifying this lifestyle at the same time. It was kind of the message was muddled, and as someone who's as I think we said in the intro, I too have dealt with people in my life who have addictions, and it was kind of hard to decide what to make of that.
I'll tell you something. When I sat down and watched this the first time, which was a couple weeks ago when you first suggested this, I didn't get it until I sat back and thought about it, and then I realized that the film wasn't about drinking. It wasn't about a drunk. It was more or less, to me, about a man who evidently was or had the lifestyle of drinking in his life, but
isn't that by definition a drunk?
Not necessarily, because he had the addiction at one point in time. It was the moment that we were seeing in his life where he was actually trying to be somewhat sober for a moment and tried to figure himself out, and that's why he went out and found his chick and all that jazz, and then we find out that he's like this great poet or something like that, or interesting poet, and she tries to give him a life of luxury. Once she finally gets his attention and tells him who she is and everything, and he's not buying it. He's not buying into her fantasy, which is what he can't be that person that she wants him to be, and that's what I realized, that not everyone can be bought.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't polish a turd.
Nobody.
Yes.
But as he said, nobody suffers like the poor, which of course she's not getting what he says when he does that. She's talking about that's like, what am I supposed to write about? The plight of the wealthy? I mean,
Too, and it's like, I don't give a shit, lady.
Yeah, so
that's kind of instant dislike for her character.
Yeah.
But she was that naive character. I mean, she's that person who was in the Gilded Cage. Sort of like how he says, I go to jail and they have lots of bars there, but not the kind I like.
Right.
But speaking of, well, there wasn't a lot in the way of special effects there, other than some blood effects.
Those were good. I believe
a lot of
that,
costume design.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just like a drama, so there's not really a whole lot to be had with effects.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. Didn't look like it was. They filmed a lot of it on location, I believe. And actually, one thing I found interesting was that they said that they actually filmed in a building where Bukowski and his lady friend had actually stayed, and they didn't realize it until he looked around and said, "Oh, this is familiar." Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But
I like it. They even scoped out the bars to make sure that they found the perfect one with that rounded thing for filming.
They were checking out crappy dive bars to make sure they had the appropriate crappy dive bars.
Well, I mean, if you look at that beginning where they show all the different bars that they show at the very opening credits, those are pretty much the bars they kept scoping out to see if those would make the good location for the film.
Right.
It is definitely a different side of humanity that you rarely got to see. I mean, you look at it's the evil side of Cheers.
Actually, one of my favorite. I feel like this was right at the beginning. I don't remember the context in the film, but I remember this line now that I'm looking on IMDb. One of my favorite lines in there was, "Some people never go crazy. What truly horrible lives they must lead." I'm like, and that kind of, in a way, it kind of sums up a lot of his worldviews. Kind of that the.
I mean, this did have some good. This did have some good lines. I will give it that.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good one-liners throughout this film.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the few charms of it. But of course, I mean, the man who wrote it was a poet and very much a nihilist. I've read a little bit of his work because, again, I had this strange fascination with the film, trying to figure out, okay, what is it about this film? So I've read a little bit of the man's work, and if you think this is dark, if you think this is dark, read some of this guy's writings.
Can we do a good nihilist like John Gardner? Like, read Grendel. Like, if you want nihilism, just read Grendel. Yeah.
But a very dark and a very dark sense of humor. I definitely found myself laughing at parts that I never really had laughed at before when I watched it the recent time.
Yeah.
you saw the special feature where the director actually had said he showed it to the American audience. He liked it because they got the jokes. And the French audience was like, this is a drama. You're not supposed to laugh. It's not supposed to be funny. He's like, no, these are jokes. You're supposed to laugh at the jokes.
Okay.
So this is supposed to be a comedy?
France.
Well,
That's the joke. France.
Okay.
well, actually, I think I did read. I didn't watch all the bonus features, but I watched a little bit, and I think the Schroeder said something that like what attracted him to this man's work was how it kind of had sort of a French flavor to it, I guess you might say. Like it was an idea of like it was an American story, but it was from a different lens than we're used to, I guess.
To clarify, the France joke was just because the joke was that it's lazy because French jokes are cheap.
Well, yeah.
I just wanted to be sure people weren't like, why does he hate the French? What?
Well,
soon you'll be talking about how you're eating freedom fries next.
Oh, gross. I still can't believe that was a real thing. Like, that was so absurd. Like, oh my
man.
Bukowski did look like he did smell. And
Yeah, well, I mean,
supposedly do smell a little bit more than
well, oh, I could say something so mean right now.
well, that's something that they claim that the real guy never actually smelled, but that, to me, that's not even possible. If you got somebody that drinks on that level,
You're gonna smell.
their pores exude alcohol. There's no way that person would not have smelled terrible, no matter what. He's sitting there like, that's the thing when he's like taking a breath mint to go apply for a job. I'm like, that's not going to work. You're an alcoholic. You can take all the showers you want. They're going to know you're an alcoholic when you walk in that room.
Work. It didn't.
Well, that's because he was checking her out the whole time.
Well, that too. Yeah. And then what was it? She asked him about the gaps in his employment. What was his response? I know it was one that was guaranteed not to work.
Anybody can get a job, but it takes a real strength of character not to work.
Right. Yeah, that was it.
Strength of character.
So what were favorite scenes? I'm sure that there was at least, because there were some scenes I thought were definitely amusing. What about you all? Do you have favorite scenes?
Not really. It's kind of hard to like. I liked the scene where he goes to the publisher's mansion and like does his little speech because it's like, oh, okay, this actually is trying to say something. It's not just following this lame dude around. And I know this movie does have like artistic value in the aspects that we've discussed. It just didn't hit on me. I mean, except for in that one scene where it's like, oh, okay, there is a point to all this.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand. I mean, American Beauty is considered an extremely, maybe it's not as well held up because of what happened to one of the main actors, but that was held up as one of the greater films artistically. And I hate that film. American Beauty. It was by what's the guy's name? God. Kevin Spacey. And I hate that film. I hate that film with a passion so deep that I want to throw the thing whenever I see it. So it is understandable.
I'm surprised you don't. I'm surprised you don't give Sam Mendes the possibility of a 10 for art because of pretension.
No. It's gone. It goes past Fellini's pretentiousness and into the realm of total annoyance and despair.
I can laugh at Fellini for having a funny name, right? That's not like too lowbrow.
Yeah.
Well, we were just poking fun at the French, so Italy's just a little bit further away.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, they're all romance languages.
But anyway.
Anyway.
But I
Climate,
think the
national
point
export.
the point was
Some
really
more.
that you can recognize something as having art value without enjoying the product itself. I think that really is the truth. Really, if you think about it, for this entire podcast, is that
Which,
one
yeah.
can recognize the value of something even if one does not like it.
That's like I recognize the artistic merit of the Suspiria remake, even though I hated the film. I recognize the artistic merit.
I remember you hating it.
Well, I didn't hate it, but like strongly dislike. Let's put it that way.
Oh, remake.
But there are very few films that I've hated. Very few, but there have been a couple.
One of them, Lords of Salem, because that's a bad movie.
I've never seen it.
And he probably never will. It's a Rob Zombie film.
Yes, probably never will.
Rob Zombies. I haven't seen 31, so I can't definitively say, but it's almost certainly his worst movie by far.
I mean,
Yes,
House of a
that does not
Thousand
speak
Corpses,
highly.
I could tell Jacob couldn't watch House of a Thousand Corpses, so anything at that level, he just wouldn't be able to. Yeah, there would be no.
No,
I don't think it does.
so much no.
It doesn't have that much gore in it from
House. House kind of does.
What?
Actually,
I was
They skin a dude.
Lords of Salem. I don't.
Lords of Salem is just like. I've heard Lords of Salem described as an attempted remake, as a failed remake of Rosemary's Baby, and that's pretty much what it is.
Okay. Huh.
Well, for that matter, I think we've been moving around a bit much. So
yeah, we started talking about good movies, or at the very least, better movies.
Why don't we instead of get a favorite scene? Why don't we start wrapping up our discussion on favorite one-liners in the films? Any favorite one-liners that you can think of that we haven't covered?
Well, I think we've all covered the main one, which is "To All My Friends."
Yeah. To all my friends.
That is my favorite scene, to be honest. Because that is the moment where he's using some of the money that he got from the chick to buy all the everyone a round of drinks. Even
he's really rubbing it in Eddie's face.
He's like, fuck it. Let's let bygones be bygones. At least you know that I'm shitty. You know?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my favorite scene in the whole is right after he beats Eddie in the one fight for the first time. And he actually, the guy comes up with the money and he says, no. I could have lost, so, I'm not, I don't deserve all this money. It really, and in his mind, he didn't necessarily deserve it. He took some of the money for a drink, but he did not take it all. He could have taken it all. And it shows that at the end of the day, I've talked about in this show before how much I hate films with people that I can't find anything I like about him. And this guy was one I thought I didn't have anything I liked about him, but the more I've watched it, the more I realize I don't hate this guy. He's not a terrible person at the end of the day. He's just a really bad nihilist.
Right.
But I think with that, though, unless anybody has any extra to add, we can start wrapping up. Is there anything else anyone wants to add for Barfly?
I did have one question for you directly, and I should have put it forward when we were talking about the artistic merits and whatnot. I know that one film that bored you to tears was Chinatown. And another Faye Dunaway film. And I was just kind of curious where your thoughts are on the relative merits of the two.
Well, Chinatown put me to sleep every time I've tried to watch it. Every 5 times. On the 5 times I've tried to watch it, I just remember that there was something about the water. And everything else just kind of, it bored me so badly it put me to sleep. Whereas this one, I felt like it did not have that quality because I wasn't bored. I wasn't even bored when I was hating this film.
I started
So-
Far Cry. I don't know. It's I don't know what drugs you were on, but
I did think Dunaway did a better job in this one, but yeah, definitely.
Well, she had a lot to deal with. I mean, that was a very
Right.
complex character. I think that
Right.
Barfly, I think at the end of the day, Barfly is a movie with a lot of complexity character-wise, especially the two lead characters.
Right.
It's got
And
complexity, and I do think it does have a moral of a story. It just takes a little bit of a slow burn to go through the lifestyle that this main character goes through to get to that. And
Yeah.
I think it drags itself across the bar floor to get there. Just a I neither love it nor do I hate this film, but I do see the artistic value in it.
Yeah.
Let's say my final word. Though I've had many mixed feelings about this film over the years, I am definitely a much wiser person for having watched it.
Well, I'll have to stay neutral on this. I'm not sure if I learned really much of anything. I guess the thing that I learned was, like I said is that you no matter who you are, what status you are, no one can buy your who you are.
well,
You have to learn what life is all about on your own and stand on your own 2 feet.
if you're a certain type of political pundit, people definitely can buy what you are. Kind of funny to hear.
That's everyone you put in any political standpoint.
No, just really bad specific ones whom I won't name.
Well, with that being said, why don't I go ahead and I'll start the I will start and the introductions, and then we will move from here. Well, actually, outros, I should say, and move from there. So, Dustin, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm Dustin. I run the Crypt of Horrors here on YouTube, where I post pretty much whatever I feel like related to horror, mostly unboxings and stuff related to my physical horror collecting. So figures, Blu-rays, pretty much whatever. So join me as I show off the stuff I find around town. And I've got a bunch of uploads that are sort of ready to go. And as soon as I get my meds back and can actually focus on a task for more than 10 minutes at a time, a bunch of those should be going live. So I got my Shut Factory Night of the Creeps super box set, and that's about ready to go. So that'll be fun to show off. I'm also on Instagram at DHR Hunter, which will probably also become the Crypt of Horrors at some point. And then you can find me on Twitter yet again as the Crypt of Horrors, just causing mayhem and having a good time. So Inside Movies Galore is also on Twitter. What's the handle, Dave?
The handle is actually underneath my name. In fact, at David Streggy, capital DS. So for those of you who want to go and check me out, it's been many different names, but I think I'm going to keep it at Inside Movies Galore for that one, and then create a different Twitter for my other endeavor that I'm out there for. But before I go into my outro, why don't you, Jacob, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm gonna head out real quick, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Take it away, Jake.
All right. Well, I'm Jake. I am a TV movie fan collector, particularly anime and certain other subgroups, and frequently guest with Brandon on Septum Sin versus the World. We recently posted some very in-depth looks at our own anime backgrounds with the second part of our influential lists. We do other big ones coming up. We've got a big best of anime film list that we're working on, and of course, in the Criterion sale coming up, we might chime in on that again because that's fun. We love Criterion. And I do also have my own YouTube channel, Kotobuki Jake, sporadically updated, but about nature and the natural world. And do have a Hub Pages account, also Kotobuki Jake, which I really don't update very much, but there is some interesting articles on there. And that'll do for now.
Alrighty, Brandon.
Yep. Before I hand it back to Dave, I am Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We are a physical media collecting site, or actually YouTube channel. We dedicate ourselves to all things physical media, be it video games, music, books, or movies, though movies tend to be our concentration. We do pickup videos, we talk about what's coming out, and we do a variety of top 10s and top 15s, as Kotobuki Jake has talked about earlier. Of course, we also do some work on Inside Movies Galore. We had some very good joint projects, and hopefully we'll be talking about some Jackie Chan movies very soon in the future. And on top of that, we have just a number of various projects coming up. And of course, I will turn this back over to Dave, of course, who will not just talk about yourself, but I guess about the upcoming month of July.
Definitely. So what's coming up in July, folks, is Slasher Summer, correct? And the names and titles of the films are posted as the first post that you see on the Inside Movies Galore page. So definitely check that out on Facebook. And my name is David Streggy, and I run Inside Movies Galore along with everyone else here. And I also do interviews through Inside Movies Galore, and I also do film reviews. Just I've kind of kept back on the film reviews for the moment. I'm in interview mode, and tomorrow evening I will be going on with Tim Ritter, which some of you may or may not know who he is, and an interview will show up. Not on the YouTube page, but it will definitely show up in some way, shape, or form on the page. So definitely keep a lookout for that. Earlier yesterday, I did an interview that y'all should check out. It's with Small Town Monsters director Seth Breedlove, and he himself has done some documentaries that he did on the Chicago Mothman. He did some documentary on the Beast of Bray Road. So definitely check his films out, and the interview that I did with him. So definitely check some of those out, and some of the other interviews that I'll be posting past and present. So in any case, thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And one more time, folks, to all my friends.
All my friends.
Yes, to all my friends.
Alrighty, stay tuned next week for Brandon. What is the film for next week?
It is Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, the horror
Nice.
comedy.
I have actually not seen that movie, even though I own it. So
Oh, it's a delightful film. So we will have some fun with that.
definitely. Definitely. So, alrighty, folks, stay tuned for Leslie Vernon next week. So stay tuned.